I'm Emily Carter, a 29-year-old interior designer based in Chicago, and I've just landed what feels like the opportunity of a lifetime. A $12,500 0-cent sponsorship to transform my family's rooftop into an urban oasis. As I stepped onto that dusty terrace at sunrise, clipboard in hand, my heart pounded with excitement. This was the project that could finally prove my worth. But before the first brick was laid, something caught my eye. A crew of workmen whispering behind a massive wooden frame, its planks warped and stamped with a logo I'd never seen. The air smelled faintly of fresh cedar and turpentine, but there was something off. Like paint spilled overnight and hastily wiped away, leaving ghostly streaks across my blueprints. My phone buzzed. Check the final invoice before you sign. No sender. My pulse quickened. I'd thought this rooftop makeover was a gift, a chance to honor my family's legacy. Instead, I was about to be drawn into a secret that would shatter every assumption I'd ever made. Join me now as I revisit the moments that defined our bond and set the stage for everything that followed. I still remember the first time Jason and I painted together. I must have been 7 and he 9, sprawled out on the living room floor with jars of acrylics and 2 thrifted canvases. My hands were speckled blue, his were bright red. We laughed as we smeared colors into each other's hair more than onto the canvas, creating a riot of abstract chaos. Our parents watched from the doorway, smiling indulgently, until Dad reminded us that real art takes discipline, and Mom rallied us to clean up before dinner. Even at that age, Jason had this patient way of guiding me. Try blending the yellow into the orange here, he'd say, tilting my brush just so. That was our rhythm for years. Weekends spent sketching old brownstones in Hyde Park, evenings poring over home design magazines, and every Christmas Jason gifting me vintage hardbound editions of Frank Lloyd Wright's work. I was the dreamer, obsessed with every shade, texture, and pattern, and he was the pragmatist, helping me draft floor plans on graph paper, teaching me to measure twice and cut once. When I declared at 16 that I wanted to study interior design at the School of the Art Institute of Chicago, he didn't bat an eye. Instead, he offered to lend me the $8,000 0-cent tuition deposit he'd saved from his summer landscaping business. College was transformative. I immersed myself in color theory and spatial psychology while Jason interned at his father's real estate firm. He'd visit me at the studio late at night, carrying leftover pizza boxes and coffee, critiquing my 3D models. "That balcony looks cramped," he'd tease, nudging my scale model with his pencil. Then he'd draw a tiny planter box here or an overhang there, and suddenly my design felt more livable. I came to trust his eye as much as my own. After graduation, I launched my boutique firm Carter & Co. Interiors. Business was good, $45,000. 0 cents in revenue that first year, ramping up $220,000 0 cents by the end of year 2. Jason, meanwhile, decided to start his own venture, a tech platform connecting homeowners with vetted contractors. He borrowed $5,000 0 cents from me to cover the initial development costs, promising to pay me back with interest once he secured seed funding. I hesitated, but I believed in him as much as he believed in me. After all, he'd never steered me wrong before. That spring, our parents hosted their annual anniversary party at the family's century-old brownstone. I spent weeks planning the decor, custom drapery, uplighting to highlight the crown molding, and even a temporary pergola on the backyard patio for the hors d'oeuvres. I invested $7,800, 0 cents of my own money, convinced that every detail would reflect our family's legacy and my rising reputation. Jason showed up last minute, carrying his laptop to present a live demo of his platform to some guests he'd roped in as potential investors. Our roles reversed. He was the showman and I was the designer behind the curtain. We high-fived when he closed a verbal commitment for $20,000, 0 cents in funding, the biggest break of his career so far. That night, When the pizzas and pastel-colored drinks finally wound down, I caught him staring at the pergola I'd designed. "You did good, sis," he said quietly. "This might be the start of something big." In that moment, surrounded by friends and family, I felt a surge of pride that we were building something together, two siblings bound by creativity and ambition. But beneath the surface, our paths began to diverge. While I focused on aesthetics and client satisfaction, Jason's world quickly became numbers and analytics. He moved to a co-working space in the Loop. I stayed in my cozy Lincoln Park studio apartment. Calls that used to be daily check-ins became weekly status reports. He spent nights debugging code. I spent them on site visits and material samples. Despite the distance, I never doubted our bond. Whenever I landed a big count, like the $35,000 0 cents loft renovation for a tech executive, Jason was the first to celebrate. When he finally closed a $150,000 0 cents seed round, I flew to Seattle to surprise him at the pitch event. We toasted with cheap champagne in plastic cups, two scrappy entrepreneurs forging our own paths. Then came the text message that jolted me awake at 2 a.m. last month. "Heads up. There's an extra $3,200 0 cents charge from Luna Interiors on your project." I stared at the screen, bleary-eyed. Luna Interiors was a name I didn't recognize, tucked between line items for roof sealant and electrical wiring. My first thought was that someone had made an innocent clerical error. My second was Jason. He had partnered with so many subcontractors through his platform. Maybe Luna was one of them. I hit reply. "Who is Luna?" No response, just the sound of crickets on the other end. I snoozed my phone and rolled over, adrenaline still racing. Memories flooded back. When Jason first pitched his platform, he'd boasted about a secret beta group of contractors under the codename Luna Collective. He insisted it would guarantee quality and cut out middlemen fees. I'd been skeptical. After all, I worked with Evergreen Landscaping because of their impeccable track record. But he'd convinced me that innovation required risk. I signed on as an early case study, trusting his judgment. The following morning, I called our usual contact at Evergreen Landscaping to confirm the rooftop planting schedule. Hydrangeas, Japanese maples, and a $1,400 0 cents entry fee for the premium soil blend. As we discussed irrigation lines, she casually mentioned a $3,200 0 cents bill from Luna Interiors for structural bracing beneath the decking boards. "That's not our charge," she said. "You might want to ask Emily's project manager." My throat went dry. I opened my contracts folder and scanned the documents. No mention of Luna anywhere. Only my signature, dated last week, approving the total project cost of $12,500 0 cents. I pressed call Jason. It rang 3 times before voicemail kicked in. I left a message. "Hey, it's me. Got a weird charge. Let me know what's up." No call back. Over the next few days, every question I emailed or texted him was met with vague assurances. "Looking into it. We'll get you details soon. Don't worry, Em." But my worry grew with each passing hour. My mind replayed our childhood pact. He'd always have my back and I'd have his. If something felt off now, something really was off. That night, as I sketched alternative pergola designs to calm my nerves, I heard the ping of an incoming email. The subject line read, "Urgent, final invoice attached." Attached was a PDF titled Emily Carter _rooftop _5 _625 PL. But when I opened it, the numbers didn't match my budget. The total was $15,200 0 cents, $12,500 0 cents. I'd approved, plus the phantom $3,200 0 cents, minus a prepayment credit of $500 0 cents. No breakdown for the mysterious $3,200 0 cents. The footer bore the Luna Interiors logo, an abstract crescent moon overlaid on a blueprint grid. My stomach twisted. How had a company I'd never vetted slipped into my project? Why was it adding tens of thousands of dollars? And most of all, why was Jason, of all people, silent? I sat there in the glow of my drafting lamp, the edges of my sketches smudged by my clammy fingers. My past connection with him, the shared dreams, the mutual support, felt like a fragile shell cracking under pressure. Just as I thought everything was clear, my phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't a text or email notification, but a calendar alert: call with Luna Interiors 9 a.m. tomorrow. I hadn't scheduled any such call. My heart thundered. Was this some automated trap? A rogue booking made in my name? Or worse, a deliberate move to pull me into something I didn't understand? And right then, in the quiet of my studio, I realized that the story Jason and I had written together for decades might have a hidden chapter, one he never intended me to read. Just as I thought I had clarity, a call from the past left me reeling. That Monday morning, I arrived on the rooftop at 8:30 a.m., clipboard in hand, only to be met by Mike from Evergreen Landscaping, who pointed out a baffling $3,200.00 line item billed by Luna Interiors for structural bracing work neither we nor I had approved. My heart sank as I scanned the invoice stamped with a silver crescent moon logo and my forged signature dated June 25. And I called Jason, but his voicemail swallowed my questions. Driving north to meet my Evanston client, I tried to shake the unease. Maybe Luna was part of Jason's new beta group. But when a Zoom invitation titled Rooftop Project Conference Call with Luna pinged onto my phone at 3:45 p.m., I knew something was off. On screen, Marisol Vega, the CEO of Luna Interiors, briskly explained that Jason had digitally signed a work order in my name via DocuZone on June 20, ordered the extra joist supports, and expected payment by July 10, or the city inspector would halt the project. My protest, that I never authorized or even knew Luna existed, was met with her clipped apology, and I realized that if I didn't settle the $3,200.00, my $12,500.00 investment, and the Japanese maples and hydrangeas yet to be planted, would be for naught. That evening, I called Sarah, my attorney friend, who confirmed I had grounds to dispute the fraudulent contract, but warned me it would cost a $2,000.00 retainer I couldn't spare. Sleep eluded me as I reviewed my budgeting spreadsheet. The invoice opened beside me and imagined a faithless accountant stamping "paid" across my life's work. By dawn, I dressed in power colors and ascended that ladder again, only to find the Luna-branded steel plates under the decking scuffed and pristine, too perfect, as though staged. Tracing the sharp logo with clammy fingers, I understood that this was no safety upgrade but a scheme to pad costs, and Jason was at its center. My trust fractured. I tapped out a curt message: "Meet me here now, or we settle this in court," and descended the ladder with my toolbox in hand, ready to reclaim the truth and the rooftop I'd envisioned. I can't wait to take you to the breaking point, the instant when my carefully built world shatters before your eyes and everything unravels in chaos. When I stepped into Jason's downtown loft that evening, the city lights outside his floor-to-ceiling windows felt cold and distant, like spectators to the showdown I was about to face. He was seated behind his sleek glass desk, dark circles under his eyes betraying the late-night coding sessions he'd mentioned. His laptop lay open, cursor blinking on an empty document. I closed the door softly, then let it click shut behind me, my heart hammering. He said quietly, looking up. The ease in his voice stung me. I had rehearsed my opening lines on the subway ride here, but now that he was in front of me, I realized I had no idea how to begin. "What's wrong?" I folded my arms, trying to steady myself. "What's wrong?" I echoed, forcing my voice steady. "You tell me. You signed a work order for Luna Interiors in my name, without telling me, and now they want $3,200.00 for bracing that we never discussed. His face flickered. He pressed his lips together, eyes flickering to the stack of architectural magazines on the corner of his desk. Emily, I thought I was doing you a favor. A favor? I repeated, taking a step closer. The air smelled faintly of coffee and soldering iron from his desktop rig. You inserted a company I'd never heard of into my project. You forged my signature. You call that a favor? He exhaled slowly, closing his eyes. When he opened them again, they were shadowed with regret. It wasn't my intention to betray you, he said. I set up Luna Interiors as a subsidiary under my new platform. It was supposed to streamline billing. One less intermediary. I thought if you saw lower costs overall, you'd appreciate the efficiency. Hollow and sharp. Lower costs? My contract was $12,500.00. With Luna's $3,200.00, I'm now facing a $15,200.00 final bill, after that phantom $500.00 credit. Efficiency? You're adding $2,700.00 to my tab. He ran a hand through his hair. The $500.00 was a pilot program discount. I figured that would soften the blow. Soft? The word caught in my throat. I had a meeting today with a client who paid a $15,000.00 retainer. I nearly lost that account because I couldn't explain this. I sank into the chair opposite him, burying my face in my hands. My reputation is on the line, my business is on the line, and you couldn't even pick up your phone. His shoulders slumped. I'm sorry. When you texted and I didn't answer, I was working against the clock to get the code for the billing system stable. I thought I could fix it before it blew up. And you thought hiding it from me was the way to do that? I looked up at him, seeing his chest rise and fall as though each breath was a calculated choice. You used my name, my likeness, my project to test your unvetted contractors. How many other sneaky charges have you slipped into my life? He winced, reaching for a framed photo on his desk, a picture of us from Easter last year, grinning with paint-splattered cheeks. He picked it up, turning it over in his hands. Em, look at this, he said softly. We've been a team since we could barely hold a brush. I'd never do anything to hurt you. The memory of that day, the way our laughter had echoed through my parents' kitchen, flashed through me, warming my chest briefly before the chill returned. Then why? Why didn't you just talk to me? Jason set the photo down and leaned forward, elbows on the desk. Because I was afraid you'd say no. You've built your career on being meticulous and creative. I'm built on analytics and growth hacking. I thought if I pitched Luna as a quality upgrade, code-mandated reinforcement, you'd trust my judgment like you always have. Except this time you were wrong, I said, voice trembling, because this isn't about safety or city code. Because the Chicago Department of Buildings is never going to look for Luna Interiors. You did this to pad revenue on your platform to meet your monthly targets. He dropped his head, and when he looked up again, his eyes glistened. I needed the numbers to look good. The board meeting is next week. If I didn't show increased contractor adoption, I risk losing the seed round. Your seed round, I whispered. Not mine. Silence settled between us. I stared at the faint moonlight reflecting off his keyboard. How much did Luna bill in total this month through my name? He hesitated, glancing at his notifications. About $18,400.00 across 3 projects. My breath caught. 3 projects? That's nearly $10,000. 0 cents more than my approved budgets. How many clients will wake up to surprise invoices? I didn't think it would get this big, he admitted, voice barely audible. I was careful. only low-profile jobs. But then I saw the numbers climb and I panicked. It was supposed to be a temporary pivot. Temporary? I scoffed. Jason, this is fraud. My chest tightened as the word left my lips. This is misrepresentation, and because you used my signature, I am the one on the hook. He winced, rubbing his temples. I know. I stood and walked to the window, staring down at the glowing river of traffic on Michigan Avenue. So what now? I asked, voice distant. Are you going to sweep this under the rug and what? Absorb the losses yourself? He rose and came to stand beside me, hands in his pockets. I'll pay the Luna invoices out of my personal account. I'll authorize refunds for anyone who disputes. I'll fix the DocuZone issue so no one else can sign under your name. I turned to face him, surprised by the tremor in his voice. And what about me? What about the trust you shattered? He swallowed. I'll do whatever it takes to earn it back. I thought of the rooftop I'd envisioned, soft, ambient lighting winding between maples, a cedar bench framing the lake view, my voice explaining every detail at the ribbon cutting to a cheering crowd of family and friends. Now the deck felt like a stage set for his experiment. If you pay Luna's $3,200, 0 cents for my project, I said slowly, that's step one. But that alone won't make this right. He nodded, agreed. My throat tightened as I approached the desk. I reached for the contract folder I'd brought with me and flipped it open. I want full transparency on my projects. I slid the documents toward him, starting with a forensic audit of every invoice bearing my name in the last 6 months. I want itemized billing, digital timestamps, everything. His jaw clenched. That's fair. I want you to set up separate accounts for your company. No more using my name as a workflow shortcut. And I want you to join me on this rooftop next week when I inspect the work, side by side. We'll call the city inspector together and you'll personally introduce her to the Luna plates you've installed. He exhaled, relief and shame mingling on his face. I will. I closed the folder and leaned back against the window. Jason, I love you, but right now, I don't know how long it'll take to trust you again. My voice cracked on the last word. I need to see that you mean what you say. He reached out and gently touched my arm. I do. In that moment, I realized the stakes had shifted. This was no longer just about a rooftop. It was about the bond we'd shared since childhood, the partnership that fueled our careers and our dreams. I met his eyes, noticing how the city reflected in them like a prism of possibilities and regrets. Then let's start rebuilding, I whispered, but on my terms. He nodded, and together we moved to the desk, pencils and paper in hand, beginning to draft the audit plan. The betrayal still throbbed in my chest, but as I sketched out the steps, document requests, contractor interviews, coding logs, I felt a renewed surge of determination. This was the moment I refused to be a victim of his ambition. I would reclaim my project, my reputation, and, if he proved worthy, our partnership. As midnight approached and the city's hum lulled into a distant roar, Jason emailed the first request for DocuZone logs, and I forwarded my contract files. We worked side by side, the glow of our screens illuminating the lines of confrontation and reconciliation etched into our faces. Though the path ahead was uncertain, for the first time since I discovered Luna's invoice, I felt a spark of hope that from this major betrayal could emerge a stronger foundation, built not on blind trust, but on accountability, transparency, and the shared canvas of our sibling bond. I woke before dawn, my eyes stinging from a night of restless tossing, and the first thing I saw when I opened my phone was that Luna invoice again, $3,200, 0 cents, glaring in bold red digits against a sterile white background. My chest tightened as Jason's loft replayed in my mind, his quiet apologies, the hollow weight of regret in his eyes. I pressed my palms against the cool glass of my bedroom window and watched the pale light of morning creep over Lake Michigan, the city already waking, while I felt trapped beneath a tide of betrayal I couldn't brace against. By 7:15 I was back on the rooftop, the steel bracing under the decking gleaming in the sunrise as if staged, with every plate aligned, every bolt torqued to perfection. Mike from Evergreen Landscaping was already there, frowning over the ledger in his hand. "You okay?" he asked, and though his sympathy was a warm pool I could barely dip into, I forced out a nod and told him I was just thinking. But thinking only deepened the ache. I ran my fingers along the edge of the cedar bench I'd specified, remembering its $350 0-cent plank wood, its fine grain and rustic patina. Now feeling like a lie, a symbol of a dream twisted into a nightmare. The hum of the city below, cars rolling on Lakeshore Drive, the distant rumble of the L, should have been comforting, but instead it reminded me that life moved on while my world had ground to a halt. I sank to my knees, hands bracing on the unfinished decking, and let the tension spill out in heavy, wrenching sobs. Thinking of the $8,000 0 cents Jason had lent me for college, the $5,000 0-cent seed money I'd given him for his startup, and how our safety net had unraveled into frayed expectations and exploitation. A muted buzzing drew me from my haze. 5 missed calls from my landlord, a message from Sarah, my attorney friend, and an email notification from Luna with the subject line "Final Notice, Overdue Balance," threatening to escalate my debt to $3,460 0 with late fees after July 11. My hands shook as I unlocked the screen. Late fees, nearly a 10% surcharge I couldn't afford. I stumbled to my feet, the rooftop feeling like a stage set for my undoing, and fled down the ladder. In the lobby's marble hall, I sank onto a leather bench and buried my face in my hands as my phone clattered to the floor, then resurfaced in Mike's concerned offer of a tissue. Back in my apartment, the open-concept living space, once brightened by mood boards on my coffee table, mocked me with its silence. I made coffee, its bitter aroma filling the kitchen, each sip burning as it went down. I spread every invoice, contract, and email exchange into neat stacks on my dining table, evidence in a trial I wasn't sure I could win. Memories flooded me. My father's proud smile when I unveiled my first IKEA hack coffee table at 10, my mother's tears of joy when I renovated her kitchen for my college deposit. Moments that once affirmed love and support now felt tinged with the darker stain of obligation and betrayal. New tears came, laced with anger, and I pounded the table until papers scattered. "No," I muttered through clenched teeth. Opening my laptop, I drafted a formal dispute to Luna's billing department, demanding authentication of the DocuZone signature and halting payment until investigation. As I pressed send, my heart pounded. It was a small act, but an act of defiance. I leaned back and exhaled, feeling the weight in my chest ease by a fraction, acknowledging my vulnerability had cleared space inside me. By afternoon, I'd called my accountant to earmark $2,000 0 for Sarah's retainer, blocked off a day for the forensic audit, reached out to 2 independent contractors for cost assessments, and sent my landlord a polite heads-up that rent might be delayed. Each call lifted me a bit higher. Under the amber streetlights that evening, I walked my block, remembering the storefronts where I'd dropped off drapes or grabbed coffee, and realized life would continue even if my rooftop stalled. My career and identity wouldn't be defined by someone else's deception. At home, I opened a fresh sketchbook page and traced the rooftop's footprint, tentatively sketching light fixtures, seating areas, and a herb garden in galvanized planters. With each line, I felt strength return. Betrayal had cost me tears and sleepless nights, but it couldn't rob me of my creativity or resolve. When I finally turned off the drafting lamp at midnight, the Luna invoice still hovered in my inbox, But for the first time since this began, I felt equipped to face it, not as a broken designer, but as a woman who had allowed herself to collapse, to grieve, and to begin rising again. That afternoon I retreated to my Lincoln Park studio, its vaulted ceilings and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking flowering dogwoods, desperate for distance from the rooftop and Jason's betrayal. I sank onto the sectional sofa with my laptop and reread the dispute email I'd sent to Luna Interiors. The line, "No payment will be made until full authentication of the DocuZone signature," pulsing on the screen like a lifeline. But I needed proof, not just words. Then I remembered the stack of letters in the bottom drawer of my childhood desk, my father's handwritten notes tucked away since I'd turned 25. One from June 2019, sealed with a tiny wax emblem, revealed he'd placed $15,000, 0 cents, in trust, specifically for my creative pursuits, with Jason appointed as manager. My breath caught. If that trust existed, its account statements could show whether Luna's phantom $3,200, 0 cents, ever passed through Jason's hands. I grabbed my phone and called Sarah, my attorney friend, who agreed that securing those trust records via an emergency discovery motion would be a game changer. Even at the $2,000 0 cents retainer I could scarcely afford. In the next hour I scanned the letter, pulled my bank statements to confirm I'd never paid Luna a cent, and printed the DocuZone logs proving I'd only authorized a $500 0 cents pilot program credit months ago. By 6 p.m. I had a neat stack of exhibits. Dad's letter, my bank records, DocuZone metadata, and the original Carter & Co. contract spread across my drafting table next to mood boards of velvet swatches and brass hardware. A vivid clash of creativity and rigor that energized me. I emailed Jason to demand PDFs of every trust fund transaction by noon tomorrow, then sketched the rooftops footprint in my design software, overlaying zones labeled Inspection Area, Legal Exhibit 1, and City Code Compliance to visualize the intersection of my artistry and this unfolding legal battle. Over dinner, I drafted my outline for Sarah's motion. Statements of facts, exhibits, affidavits, and a proposed order to expedite discovery. And as night fell, I assembled a final packet to send her. Trust fund records, unauthorized payment proof, Luna's acknowledgement, and my audit plan. At 9:45 p.m., Marisol Vega from Luna Interiors confirmed they'd begun an internal audit of the June 20 work order and would provide authorization logs by July 5, a small but critical concession. Finally, at midnight, I logged into DocuZone's portal and captured screenshots of the signature event traced to a corporate IP, saving them as Exhibit A. The retainer had tapped my account, but I felt richer in resolve than ever. Lying in bed, fatigue tugging at me, I reflected on my journey from despair on the rooftop to this moment of strategic clarity. Betrayal had catalyzed a recovery spark, unearthing hidden family resources, mobilizing a loyal friend attorney, and proving that my creative mind was as adept at crafting legal arguments as it was at rendering elegant interiors. The rooftop still waited for its transformation, but now I knew exactly how I would reclaim it, and my confidence in the days to come. I convened the family meeting at my penthouse that Saturday evening, inviting Jason, Mom, Dad, and even Marisol via video link, so everyone could witness transparency in action. The living room glowed with amber uplights I'd installed myself, soft washes of color that would normally accentuate my finished projects. Tonight, they highlighted the tension in the air. I began by laying out the exhibits on the glass coffee table. Dad's 2019 trust letter, original Carter & Co. contract, bank statements showing 0 payments to Luna, DocuZone logs with the corporate IP signature, and Luna's own acknowledgement email. Jason's face went pale as I recounted each unauthorized step: the June 20 digital signature he'd orchestrated, the $3,200 0 cents bracing charge he'd slipped in, the phantom pilot probe at a credit that masked his scheme. Mom's hand flew to her mouth, Dad's jaw clenched. Next, I switched to my laptop and projected a side-by-side comparison of my approved budget, $12,500.00, against the inflated total, $15,200.00, complete with breakdowns of each charge category: materials, labor, subcontractors, and Luna's markup. I clicked through the billing entries, highlighting the skewed margins. Over 40% markup on what should have been a $2,000.00 joist reinforcement line item, and nearly $10,000.00 in additional sums Jason had funneled into other clients' projects without my knowledge. Marisol nodded gravely from her tablet, confirming Luna would credit back the full $3,200.00 by Monday and freeze any further billing until the dispute was resolved. Then came the climax. I called the city inspector, Ms. Rivera, live on speakerphone. She confirmed that while Chicago Code R 507.2 did require bracing, inspection records showed no permit application had been filed under Luna's name or any DocuZone subsidiary. In fact, the rooftop remained uninspected. Any work done so far could be considered unlicensed. Jason's shoulders slumped, as Ms. Rivera advised that without a proper permit and approved contractor registration, the decking installation could be re-tagged, halting the entire project. The room fell silent. I turned to Jason, voice steady. This rooftop was meant to honor our family legacy, not your bottom line. You've admitted to padding your platform's metrics at my expense. Now you must make it right. He swallowed, then reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a checkbook, writing a check for $3,200.00, plus an additional $500.00, plus an additional $500.00 to cover Luna's early termination fees. He slid both checks across the table with a nod of apology. I'll handle the permit filings by tomorrow and call the inspector myself, he promised. I accepted the checks, but reminded him we agreed on a full forensic audit of every project billed under my name in the last 6 months. I'll need you to review each one with me. He nodded again, eyes downcast but resolute. In that moment the tables had turned. What started as his unilateral experiment became a collaborative path forward. As the city lights shimmered through my windows and the soft hum of our uplights pulsed around us, I realized I'd reclaimed not only a rooftop but the integrity of my work, the trust of my family, and ultimately, my own power to transform betrayal into a stronger foundation. Between contract disputes and rooftop inspections, a quieter memory surfaced one evening as I flipped through an old wooden box in my bedroom closet. My grandfather's gold pocket watch, nestled in a velvet-lined cradle beneath fading newspaper clippings. I held it in my palm and remembered the day he handed it to me. Me, barely 8 years old, sitting on his lap in the summer sun, filtering through the lace curtains of his living room. He wound the crown with a gentle click and pressed it into my small hand. "This belonged to your great-grandfather," he said, voice low and earnest. "It's not the gold that matters, Em, it's the time it represents, the moments we give each other." I'd watched the second hand sweep around its face, marveling at the tiny gears spinning inside. That afternoon, Granddad had taught me how to open the hinged back cover, pointing out the maker's mark and the intricate filigree engraving. He told me stories of how his father, my great-grandfather, had worn the watch while working as a railway engineer, timing locomotives down to the second to ensure passenger safety. "He trusted that watch forever," Granddad said, "just as he trusted the men in his crew." I nodded, absorbing the weight of his words, though I was too young to grasp the depth of loyalty and responsibility they carried. Years later, long after Granddad had passed and I'd carried on designing interiors and drafting contracts, that memory returned with fresh clarity. I thought of that watch as I prepared my forensic audit, realizing that I'd been given a similar legacy of trust, one I'd extended to Jason without hesitation. The pocket watch sat on my drafting table as I pored over DocuZone logs, a silent reminder that time, and trust must be honored with care. One weekend, while Jason and I reviewed the billing exhibits together, he noticed the watch. He reached out and cradled it gently. "I remember this," he murmured, his voice uncharacteristically soft. "Granddad gave it to you after the art fair. You won second place for that abstract landscape?" I smiled, the memory of our triumphant high five fresh in my mind, how he'd lifted me on his shoulders so I could ring the little silver bell signaling the start of the prize ceremony. His laughter then had been pure joy, an echo of the loyalty he'd shown me ever since. Holding the watch, Jason said quietly, "I forgot what that felt like, being trusted just for being me." His admission hung in the air, and for a moment the legal binders and invoices faded away. We stood side by side, partners again, reminded that our bond had formed long before profit margins and platform metrics. I slipped the watch back into my pocket and said, "This isn't about money, Jason. It's about honoring what Granddad meant when he gave this to me. Time, loyalty, faith in each other." That evening, after Jason wired the $3,200.00 back to Carter & Co. and scheduled the city permit, we sat on the rooftop under the strings of globe lights I'd installed. I pulled out the pocket watch and wound it carefully. The tick-tock filled the space between us as we sipped sparkling water and surveyed the cedar planks, the newly planted maples, and the soft glow of the city beyond. I closed my eyes and felt the gentle weight of responsibility settle in my palm. An heirloom not of gold, but of trust passed down through generations. In that moment, I understood a small but powerful lesson, that loyalty, once fractured, could be reforged stronger than before, that the value of faith and accountability far outweighs any shimmer of gold. And as Jason's laughter, warm and genuine, drifted across the deck, I knew that this side story, this bonus insight, was more than a memory. It was the foundation on which we would build every chapter to come. The morning after our rooftop reconciliation, I arrived early, before sunrise, to meet Miss Rivera, the city inspector, for the final compliance walkthrough. Jason was already there, clad in his dark blazer and holding a permit folder thicker than either of us expected. I felt a surge of vindication as I watched him set up the folding table beneath the pergola I'd designed, but I reminded myself to stay focused on the job at hand. At 6:45 a.m., Ms. Rivera's van pulled into the alley with two soft dings of the door. She stepped out, clipboard in hand, and greeted us both by name. Her tone was professional but warm, as though she sincerely wanted to help us close this chapter. I led her around the deck, pointing out the $3,200.00 bracing now officially certified under Carter & Co., interiors, the new permit number printed in bold on the folder, and the Japanese maples, each precisely 24 inches tall, matching the nursery's guarantee. When we reached the steel plates, she knelt to inspect the welds. Jason hovered behind her, fidgeting with his cufflinks. I noticed a faint tremor in his hand, the same tremor I'd first seen when he realized how deep his deception ran. Miss Rivera tapped her pen on the plate, then turned to him. "Mr. Carter," she said, glancing at the permit cover, "you'll need to file a corrective action report. Chicago Code requires contractors to disclose all subcontractors at permit application." She marked a checkbox on her form. "Notice of non-compliance, Section 2.13. Jason's shoulders slumped further. "I understand," he replied quietly. "I'll submit the report today and attend the hearing next week." Ms. Rivera looked at me. "Ms. Carter, your documentation was thorough. You've demonstrated due diligence in disputing the authorized work order. I'll recommend lifting any penalties once the corrective report is filed." She offered me a small, genuine smile, an acknowledgement of my persistence. After she left, Jason slumped against the railing. The city van rolled away, its tail lights fading into the dawn. I leaned beside him, feeling the cedar planks cool beneath my fingertips. "You did it," I said softly. "You're owning up. he nodded, voice hollow. They're going to fine me $500 0 cents for the disclosure violation, and I have to appear before the building commission. They might suspend my contractor's license for 30 days. My chest tightened. This was the fall he deserved, but I wasn't there to gloat. Then you'll face it, I replied, just like you faced me. Over the next few days, Jason's downfall unfolded in real time. Word spread through his startup community that Luna Interiors had been exposed for billing fraud. Venture investors who'd once praised his growth metrics quietly withdrew expressions of interest. Unsettled by the news of inflated contractor adoption, the tech blogs ran scathing commentaries. When ambition overtakes ethics, and startup founder's rookie mistake, forging a sister's signature. Jason handled it with a humility I hadn't seen before. He posted an apology on his platform's dashboard, addressing every single contractor and client. To all affected by my misuse of the Luna Interiors subsidiary, I take full responsibility for my actions. I'm committed to making amends, refunding every unauthorized charge, and implementing transparent billing practices. I am grateful for my sister Emily's unwavering integrity and support. Each refund processed through the platform carried a note, issued under corrective action with apologies. Watching the credits roll out, $3,200 0 cents to my account, $5,400 0 cents to 2 other clients, $4,100 0 cents to a boutique condo renovation in Bucktown. I felt a sense of closure settle over me. Then came the hearing before the Chicago Building Commission. Jason sat alone at the front table, a crisp navy suit replacing his usual tech-casual hoodie. I sat behind him in the gallery, the pocket watch of my grandfather nestled in my coat pocket like a talisman. The room was hushed as the commissioner read the charges: failure to disclose subcontractors, unauthorized permit filings, and misrepresentation under oath. Jason's lawyer stood and presented a list of corrective measures, his refund plan, updated billing protocols, and a proposal for an ethics training program he'd volunteered to teach at local coding boot camps. When his turn came, Jason rose and spoke clearly, locking eyes with each commissioner. I stand before you accountable for my lapses in judgment, he began. I allowed metrics to cloud my responsibility as a contractor and as a brother. I have refunded every client, corrected every permit, and over the next 3 months I will mentor other founders on ethical practices. I accept any penalties you deem appropriate. There was a pause, then the chief commissioner spoke. Mr. Carter, your actions have hurt both clients and family. However, your comprehensive corrective plan and public apology demonstrate genuine contrition. The board sentences you to a 21-day license suspension, a $1,200 0 cents fine, and mandatory ethics training. Jason exhaled as though a heavy weight had lifted. I saw relief flood his face, and in that moment, I realized his downfall, though painful, was also the crucible that forged his integrity anew. 2 weeks later, as his platform's metrics stabilized under the new transparent billing dashboard we'd co-designed, Jason called me with a surprising announcement. Luna Interiors was being dissolved entirely. He had sold its remaining assets at cost, turning its client list into pro bono projects for a local nonprofit that built homes for veterans. I want to leave something good behind, he said. That evening we met on the rooftop to watch the sun dip behind the skyline. The pergola glowed atop the cedar deck. The Japanese maples softly rustled in the breeze. Jason handed me a folded piece of paper. Inside was a printed copy of the nonprofit's welcome letter, welcoming me as a volunteer designer. Beneath it, in his careful script, "For every wrong I did here, I wish to do 3 rights. Thank you for holding me accountable, M. Let's build something that truly matters." I folded the note into my pocket alongside the pocket watch, its ticking a reminder that time and trust could be broken, but also repaired. As we stood side by side under the twinkling city lights, I realized that his downfall had paved the way for a more meaningful partnership. One built on transparency, accountability, and the kind of loyalty that no invoice could ever override. When dawn broke over Chicago 3 days later, I climbed onto the rooftop not as a battleground but as the birthplace of new beginnings. The cedar planks gleamed under the east light, Japanese maples stood tall in galvanized planters, and Edison bulbs promised warmth in every gathering. Jason joined me with 2 steaming mugs of coffee, and as we sat on the bench I'd etched with our initials, E+J, 6/28/25. He told me he'd filed the corrective action report, accepted his 21-day license suspension, and planned to volunteer designing accessible homes for veterans during his downtime. He even offered to donate the rooftop project outright to Carter & Co., covering every cost so I could manage it fully, and I gratefully accepted. I drafted an email to my clients announcing our ribbon-cutting ceremony, and when Mom and Dad toured the deck later that day, Mom's eyes filling with tears and Dad beaming in pride, I knew I had transformed adversity into art. Over the following week, Jason and I collaborated on pro bono projects for a veterans nonprofit, melding my design sensibility with his newfound commitment to ethical growth, each evening ending in laughter over takeout Thai as we plotted color palettes and budget spreadsheets side by side. By the time Saturday's ceremony arrived, the rooftop had become a true urban oasis. String lights overhead, soft cushions on reclaimed wood seating, and a bright yellow ribbon stretched across the entrance where friends, neighbors, and supporters gathered to celebrate resilience, creativity, and the power of family. As I snipped the ribbon, applause rippling through the crowd, I realized that the lessons I'd learned, trust must be earned and guarded, vulnerability fuels strength, creativity can map legal strategies as well as spatial layouts, accountability rebuilds integrity, and legacy transcends invoices, had forged a wiser, more resilient me. Under the soft glow of Chicago's evening lights, I breathed in the scent of cedar and fresh soil, knowing that this resolution was not an end point, but the beginning of a new chapter. One defined by transparency, collaboration, and the unbreakable bond of trust I would never again take for granted.